Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Zinx here with another video. In today's video, we're going to break down all of the action from Week 1's qualifiers for Major 4, as well as getting ready for the upcoming matches in Week 2. You guys already know how the series works, so let's get right into it. First match of last week featured the Boston Breach taking on the new Vegas Legion roster. After all the beef and backlash on Standy's position in the league and how he left Toronto Ultra, the guy had something to prove, and he and the Legion did just that by getting revenge on Boston for knocking them out of Major 3 by a scoreline of 3-1. If we take a look at the maps and modes, Vegas almost threw map 1, but a last-second play from TJ Halley and Standy combined forced Boston off the point to secure the dub on Fortress. Vegas continued to show off their S&D prowess despite the new pickup by taking the LSC low by a score of 6-4. However, Vegas's controls woes also continued as Boston made light work of Expo Control's debut to the CDO rotation, getting them back into the series. But Vegas eventually would take the series on Embassy Hardpoint as they seem to have improved in respawns throughout the season. An exceptional series out of the new sub-duo for the Legion as Standy seemed to complement TJ's playstyle better than Too Real or Proloot did. For once in the past 2 years, Donnie Temp could finally sit back and relax while his team carried him to victory. The next series on the day wasn't as good for another new roster, the London Royal Ravens. A controversial pickup of ULCs from Challengers didn't have the same impact as LA Thieves gave us the quickest 3-0 of the season. The map and modes just show how much Thieves bullied the Ravens to make things from bad to worse. Ravens barely escaped the dreaded 100-point club on Mercado, then get 6-0'd on Embassy, despite Kenny literally dropping a donut on the map. And finally, Thieves put Ravens out of their misery by taking the LSCLO control by a clean sweep as well. A solid series for the Thieves, who are looking to turn up for the later point in the season as per usual. And with nobody dropping above a point AKD, this result most likely makes champs an impossibility for the Londoners. The last match on Friday, and my most anticipated match on the weekend, was a series that did not disappoint. Atlanta FaZe versus New York Subliners. A straight-up headbutt out of two teams looking to get back on track going into the next major could have only realistically ended in one way. Thanking the COD gods that my prediction was wrong last week, the Subbies managed to take the series into Game 5 Round 11 to take down the Major 2 champions and to show the rest of the league that they could compete among the best when they are at their best. If we take a look at the maps and modes, Subliners threw a wrench in FaZe's plans by taking them down on Embassy Hardpoint by a score of 250 to 211. FaZe continued their S&D dominance by taking the Hotel 6-4. Both these teams opted to play their best map respectively in Hotel Control. However, FaZe came out on top in that as well, making myself and many others believe that this series was all but done and dusted. However, Subliners had other plans. The third hotel in a row saw New York take their best hardpoint map to send us to a map 5. And in a shocking turn of events, Subliners clutched up in the round 11 to prove to the league that it is possible to beat FaZe on S&D and to take the series 3-2. Going into Saturday, I mentioned last week that I couldn't remember the last time a team played 2 qualifying matches in the same day, and it turns out no team has ever done this. So why now? Apparently, the Minnesota Rokkr approached the league months in advance requesting to hold a small home series LAN event due to the organization not hosting a full-on major this year. This meant that Florida Mutineers and the LA Gorillas both flew out to Wisconsin this weekend to participate in this small tourney. Now, don't get me wrong, a LAN event like this is great publicity for the league, and the event itself turned out great. However, this tourney caused so much controversy amongst Twitter and most notably former pros Methods and Clayster of the Las Vegas Legion to question why Rokkr are allowed such an unfair advantage playing 2 teams who are fighting for champ spots as well. Also, players were complaining that playing 2 matches in a day is completely unfair because the team who played twice has the hot hand and therefore an unfair advantage against the second team they are facing. So remember last week when I said the league was done with drama? Well, unfortunately, it was far from it. But I'm not here to give my opinion. I'm just here to report on how the matches went. So let's get back into that, yeah? The first match on Saturday featured Rokkr's new roster taking on the Florida Mutineers. Call it crowd buff or the honeymoon period, but the Rokkr did a complete 180 after dropping Attach Fame. It seems like Vegas wasn't the only team to see success after a roster switch, as Rokkr took the series 3-0. However, Mutineers made sure it wouldn't be an easy clean sweep. If we take a look at the maps and modes, Rokkr seemed to have improved on Hydro Hardpoint by taking down another team on that map 250 to 211. Minnesota then took the momentum in the Mercado search by winning 6-3, and with Capsule going triple negative on the Hotel Control, it was highly unlikely Mutineers are going to take the map 3, but the other 3 did well to at least take it to the last round. Take nothing away from Attach and what he's done for the organization, but it seems that Fame is the better fit for this roster as he dropped a 1.5 KD in this series. Back to being online for the next series as 2 northern rivals squared off for the 3rd time in the past month as Boston looked to get revenge on Toronto Ultra. This series always seems to go to distance, and it did just that again, But this time, Boston finally shut up Scrap and the boys of Ultra by taking them down by a score of 3-2. The Major 3 champs started much slower than normal as Boston took the first 2 maps by a score of 250 to 215 on Embassy and 6-4 on Hotel. Following the intermission, Ultra seemed to lock back in by taking the El Asilo control 3-1 and the Hydro hardpoint by a convincing 250 to 175. Looking back to their usual selves, you would expect Ultra to pull off the reverse sweep, but Breach had other plans by taking the final Embassy by a score of 6-4. A humbling moment for the Major 3 champs who need to get off their victory lap and lock back in for the last 2 majors before champs. Back to the Minnesota home series as Rokkr took on LAG. Another important matchup in the champs race as LAG need a win to stay in reach of Legion, who have won their match the day before. However, Minnesota really cemented their success of this new roster by taking them down 3-1, making them 3 matches ahead of Legion in the champs race. Joe Deceives and LAG started off hot on Fortress Hardpoint, taking the map 250 to 160. However, it was all downhill from there. Rokkr cleaned up their S&D and took El Asilo 6-4, despite Joe Deceives rocking active camo. Rokkr continued to take over El Asilo by taking the control 3-2, and the final hardpoint on Mercado wasn't much of a contest, with Rokkr comfortably handing it 250 to 142. A very successful home series for the Rokkr boys as they are now 2-0 in Major 4 and looking like the top team for Major 2. Another hard series for LAG who can't seem to catch a break despite Joe Deceives dropping a 1.46. The last match on Saturday featured the LA Thieves and the Seattle Surge. With Thieves looking in final form already, it was going to take a pretty large performance out of Seattle to take this series, and despite Lamar and Pred coming to play, Mac and Sib didn't have such a good time as Thieves took the series 3-1 to improve to 2-0 on the weekend. Thieves seemed to really like Hydro in their map pool as they took down another top team by a score of 250 to 186. Trying to get as many reps as possible on Embassy Search, they took down the second team this weekend on it in the round 11. What should have been the series on El Asilo control was stolen at the death by Surge to stay alive. However, Thieves proved too hot to handle by taking the Embassy hardpoint 250 to 159. A tough result for Surge, but they had another chance to prove themselves with the first match of Sunday against Toronto Ultra. Both these teams shockingly looking to avoid going 0-2 this weekend. This series was another bang out. Just like the Breach series, the Major 3 champions started out the gate slow, and despite making another comeback to force the Game 5, there was just no ice left in the veins as Surge took the series 3-2. Taking a look at the maps and modes, Seattle learned from their defeat on Hydro Hardpoint to take map 1 250 to 239. Seattle then took the El Asilo Surge to go up 2-0 in the series. Toronto showed why they are the best control team in the game by taking map 3 in a clean sweep to start the comeback. Toronto took the Fortress Hardpoint on map 4 250 to 181 to force the map 5 again. But shockingly, Surge took both S&Ds this series to prevent the reverse sweep and remain positive on the weekend. Gonna be honest, despite the comeback, another poor showing from Ultra this weekend. Starting off 0-2 is the last thing you want to do in any major qualifiers. They gotta turn it around this week before they start in loser's bracket of Major 4. Another team in danger of going 0-2 this weekend was last seeded Royal Ravens. And their task? Take down the runners-up from Major 3, who according to Shotzi, can't lose at the moment. It's going to be hard to recap this series because after the Thieves result, you expected a little more of a fight in the series, but it just wasn't there, and Optic made even quicker work of this roster than the last series. For some odd reason, London vetoed in Fortress Hardpoint, a map that Optic have a 100-point club their last 3 opponents on, and this time was no different, tying themselves for the lowest scoring game this year. Optic looked even cleaner in Search, convincingly taking Hotel by a scoreline of 6-2, and Expo made its second ever appearance this weekend to end the series 3-1 to Optic. An unfortunate circumstance for Yuli, who was pretty much thrown into the fire with this roster move. Not exactly seeing where this move benefited the team more than having Paul X in the roster, but hopefully they practice much harder this week and put up more of a fight in week 2. The final match of week 1 was pretty shocking as well. Florida Mutineers versus Atlanta FaZe. 2 teams looking to rebound from going 0-1 in their first match. I should have known this wouldn't be the easy 3-0 I predicted. Despite Mutineers playing some of their best COD this year, it just wasn't enough to take down the Major 2 champs in the map 5. If we take a look at the maps and modes, FaZe looked to get more reps on Hotel Hardpoint after dropping that map to the Subliners and took the dub 250 to 163. Mutineers decided to challenge FaZe on their best S&D map, but shock everyone by upsetting them in the round 11. FaZe took the control 3-0 on Hotel, didn't really expect a different result there. Mutineers challenged FaZe on Embassy Hardpoint again and upset them again by a score of 250 to 183 to force a Mikado search. However, the Tiny Terrors were demons on the map as FaZe took the map 6-3 and the series 3-2. Following last week's matches, Roster Media had its way yet again. First, after beating Toronto Ultra, Boston opted to drop Vivid for the likes of Kremp, their challengers player, And Havoc of Florida Mutineers benched himself for personal reasons, meaning a return for Vickle into the starting lineup. Also forgot to mention that this week marks the return for bounty matches. For those of you unaware of what this was or how it was introduced, basically one match a week. Each team gets the chance to compete for 10,000 additional bonus winnings, with the winnings being divided amongst the winning team. With that being said, let's get into this week's predictions. First match of week 2 features the new Boston Breach roster taking on London Royal Ravens. I know London started last week terribly, but technically, if you look at this series, London's roster has had more practice time, and they may actually have the upper hand in this series. Also, for a team with little or nothing to play for, considering they can't qualify for champs, I don't doubt that they come in this series hot to shake up everyone else's standings. I predict they take the series 3-1 just because I like an underdog story. Next up, Seattle Surge take on the Florida Mutineers. Mutineers are looking to avoid going 0-3, while Seattle are trying to get a win to secure their placement for champs based on Rocker and Boston's results last week. I think that Seattle are the favorites this series, but if Florida come to play the same way they did against FaZe, I see this series going the distance, but I see Surge taking this series in a Mat 5. Final series on Friday features 2 red-hot teams in the CDL, Minnesota Rocker and New York Subliners. I should just predict now this series ends in a game 5 round 11 because let's be honest, that's how it always goes between these two rosters. I pray to God Subliners get the win, but I wouldn't feel too bad if this new Rocker roster upsets them. On Saturday, the London Royal Ravens take on the Las Vegas Legion. Unlike the Breach matchup where I think London had the advantage, I think Vegas looked way too good with their roster and I see them clean sweeping the Ravens. Next up, the battle for Los Angeles goes down as LAG take on the LA Thieves. Historically, regardless of the records, LAG has had the Thieves' number in this series. However, with that in mind, the Thieves have just looked so final thus far, and I see them taking this series 3-1. Subliners have an even harder series coming up as they face Optic Texas. According to Shotzi during Scum's watch party, Optic haven't dropped a map against NYSL, and they don't look to change that in this series. However, I have faith the Subliners will put up more of a fight than the Ravens did last week, but not enough of one to win the series. Regretfully, Optic take it 3-1. Final match of the day is even more intense as FaZe play Ultra. Number 1 versus number 2, except number 2 haven't quite looked like themselves in recent weeks. I'm gonna just say this right now, if Ultra don't come out the gates firing, this won't be like the Breach or Surge series. FaZe will punish them. I think FaZe take it 3-1. First match of Sunday is a dogfight at the bottom again. LAG versus Legion. LAG looking to get revenge for getting knocked out of Major 3 by the Legion, but I don't think revenge will come in this series. I see Legion taking this to improve 2-0 on the weekend, and surprisingly 3-0 this split. Toronto Ultra get a chance to redeem themselves against the Mutineers. Florida's new roster, along with the difficult schedule, hasn't made this split easy whatsoever, and obviously this series is entirely dependent on how Mutineers perform against Seattle, but I think this is Toronto's bounce-back series, and I see them taking the series 3-0. Week 2 is going to end on a grade A bang-out as Optic take on LA Thieves. 2 teams towards the top of the standings, only one can remain undefeated after this series. Already going to predict this series goes to a Mac 5 because it always does. I think Thieves are more consistent when they hit their stride, whereas Optic only play well when they are super confident. This series comes down to who has the better gunny overall, and I'm going to give it to Thieves 3-2. And that's going to be it for me, you guys. Thank you so much for the support on these videos. It's really motivating to keep doing something I'm really passionate about. I'll see you next week to break down all this week's action and prepare for the last week of qualifiers. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.